The Mandalorian Season 2 is the ultimate version of Star Wars. Inherent to being a multimedia franchise with various movies, video games, TV shows, and shameless product promotional materials, the Star Wars universe is vast, providing a near unlimited canvas for artists to create epic science fiction fantasy stories for over 4 decades now. Yet, The Mandalorian Season 2 may possibly be the closest Star Wars has ever come to embodying the heart and spirit of its own franchise. As documented extensively by Star Wars fans, film buffs, and pop culture historians, Star Wars was inspired by televised adventure serials and samurai and western films, and The Mandalorian Season 2 is the perfect manifestation of both, basically the closest this franchise has ever been to mirroring its inspirations. Yes, even more so than the original trilogy. The Star Wars movies were clearly inspired by old episodic television serials like Flash Gordon, which is something that can easily be seen in the opening title crawl and in how each Star Wars movie is labeled as an episode. But The Mandalorian one-ups the films in this regard. Seeing as it is a TV show, albeit streaming on Disney+, The Mandalorian Season 2, and to be honest, The Mandalorian as a cohesive whole as well, inherently represents Star Wars' episodic nature better than the movies ever could, because it's a TV show with episodes. This, in turn, allows the viewer to become ingrained in The Mandalorian Season 2's Western and samurai film style, which is an influence that this TV show wears on its armor-plated sleeve. After all, the show's main titular character is a Mandalorian, which is a near-extinct warrior society that prizes battle, tradition, and adherence to the Mandalorian creed. All qualities that parallel Star Wars' Western and samurai film aesthetic, and when combined with the episodic format, The Mandalorian Season 2's tone and style has its own sense of character and a feeling similar to those same classic westerns and Akira Kurosawa-style samurai films from ages gone by. And as a result, The Mandalorian Season 2 really nails this aesthetic. While this does not mean that The Mandalorian is the best Star Wars story, after all, A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, The Last Jedi, and The Knights of the Old Republic would have some choice words if I were to say otherwise, the fact remains that The Mandalorian Season 2 is undeniably the closest the franchise has ever come to embodying the films that inspired it. And due to this, The Mandalorian Season 2 is a really great television show, and hell, it's even better than its first season, which was already pretty solid. The Mandalorian Season 2 is a compelling Star Wars story in its own right, and as a result, it's really good. The Mandalorian Season 2's positive qualities are set up by its story. The plot follows the journey of the nameless titular Mandalorian and his companion Baby Yoda, who was the inspiration of many memes and the abomination known as Baby Nut. Through the show's 8 episodes, the duo are searching for the Jedi so that Baby Yoda can return with them where he belongs. After all, Baby Yoda is a powerful Force user, and he must be trained in order to fully use his power. This plan, however, runs into a bit of a snag. The Mandalorian really has come to care for Baby Yoda. He's basically Baby Yoda's surrogate father, kind of like Joel from The Last of Us, but much less deranged. The two have a bond, and because of this, there is a constant unspoken tension between the Mandalorian's objectives and his paternal sentimentality that drives the drama. After all, we, the viewer, do not want the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda become separated from each other, even though we logically know it would be for the best. And The Mandalorian Season 2 really plays off that emotional connection, much like a sociopath. Admittedly, The Mandalorian Season 2's story isn't too complicated. Through its 8 episodes, the main plot doesn't involve much more than Mando and Baby Yoda trying to find the Jedi. Sure, there are villains like the Imperial officer Moff Gideon who desire to throw a wrench into the proceedings and abduct Baby Yoda for nefarious reasons, but the narrative is fairly straightforward. It is pretty simple, to be honest. But this simplicity is by design. Most episodes of The Mandalorian Season 2 are relatively self-contained adventures and feature characters and narrative beats that are mostly extraneous from the main story. While most episodes begin with Mando embarking on a main story objective and quest, he usually very quickly becomes sidetracked by an episode-specific goal or problem that requires his skill set and expertise. Sometimes this involves helping new and returning different characters, learning new lore details, missions that further develop his character, or how he interacts with some surprisingly tasteful fan service. Whatever the case though, each episode eventually concludes with a small amount of progression in the main story. Admittedly, this could have been a problem. On a technical level, a bunch of The Mandalorian Season 2 can easily be summed up as filler. Many of the episodes are their own stories with their own terms, themes, and meanings, which inevitably slow up the show's main narrative as Mando becomes sidetracked by the various needs of others at the expense of his own. If anything, The Mandalorian's pathos and ethos of the show can be described as side quest man. His procrastination is on par with a playable video game character from Final Fantasy, a character like Cloud or Lightning who easily become distracted from their all-important world-altering quests in order to do menial tasks like fishing or finding a little girl's cats. Admittedly, Mando is distracted by more important things than finding cats and going fishing, but the point still stands. The Mandalorian is side quest man. With that said though, this storytelling structure actually does work in The Mandalorian's favor. As explained earlier in this review, Star Wars is a science fiction fantasy representation and combination of old Western aesthetics and Akira Kurosawa samurai films, and the story of a good-natured yet morally complicated warrior traveling to various dangerous and troubled Outer Rim settlements really befits these stylistic furnishings. Complementing the series' inherent episodic nature, the episodes within The Mandalorian work as mostly standalone Western-style adventures that are captivating in their own right, and directly mirror the classic Westerns and samurai films that influenced the original Star Wars films. After all, what is a Mandalorian if not a morally complicated cowboy or a samurai that uses his skill set to aid struggling people and communities the law has long abandoned? And honestly, what is more Western than that? Other than 6-shooters, big hats, and dubbing English over Italian actors, of course. The good performances further complement The Mandalorian Season 2's style. Starting from the top, lead actor Pedro Pascal is, as always, a very enjoyable presence who delivers a terrific performance, all despite the fact that he wears a helmet for most of the show, which is pretty impressive. Giancarlo Esposito's Moff Gideon is a great antagonistic presence with a voice so intimidating that he could read a dictionary and still sound villainous. And then there is Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff, which is inherently pretty cool, mostly because I like seeing Katie Sackhoff in more things. However, with that said, there are some problems with the characters, and it mostly has to do with stuff outside of the show. The Mandalorian Season 2's only major issues came in the form of offset drama. As many of you are likely aware, Gina Carano, who plays returning character Cara Dune, revealed herself to be kind of a terrible person. For a while, she has spouted some really offensive stuff on Twitter: anti-Semitism, transphobia, anti-mask viewpoints, and other bad opinions that only very recently got her removed from future seasons of The Mandalorian and other Star Wars projects. Furthermore, actress Rosario Dawson, who plays Ahsoka in one episode, isn't free of controversy either, seeing as she allegedly abused a trans man, which is just sad and disheartening. And between Gina Carano's and Rosario Dawson's behavior, I did not watch The Mandalorian Season 2 until well after its initial release, because I was just that put off by both of them. Transphobia just be that toxic. Don't discriminate against trans people, you fuckers. With that said though, the pros far outweigh the cons here. Even beyond the typical Star Wars accoutrements, The Mandalorian Season 2 really nails the tone and feeling of Star Wars. Through its characters, sense of adventure, and the moral parables, The Mandalorian Season 2 embodies the space western vibes that were in the original trilogy. Add on a few good performances and some delectable fan service, and The Mandalorian Season 2 is definitely the show you've been looking for. Quality stuff all around, with the exception of hating trans people. And with that, I want to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones and Slasher Vales, Mom, David Devlin, and Miles Nelson. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. I love y'all.